I've been doing something weird for the past year. I've been building a serious philosophical framework, one that unifies semiotics, cybernetics, media theory, and game theory. And my primary collaborator isn't a professor. It's Claude. I call it vibe philosophy. Let me explain. Here's what most people think AI is good for in intellectual work: summarizing papers, cleaning up prose, maybe brainstorming a few ideas. That's like using a telescope as a doorstop. What I discovered is that I can serve as something far stranger and more powerful. A philosophical stress-testing partner that never gets tired, never gets defensive, and can hold an entire theoretical architecture in working memory. The framework I've been developing is called Quaternion process theory. It started with a simple observation. Every act of cognition moves through qualitatively different registers: the immediate felt grasp, the brute encounter with resistance, and the slow mediated understanding. Not controversial. But what happens when you take that seriously? Really seriously? What happens is you start building fast. You recognize that if cognition is movement, you need a space for it to move through. You need to know what persists when everything is flowing. You need patterns of movement that sustain themselves. Before long, you have a 12-cell matrix, 6 operations, 5 invariants, 9 canonical loops, and a formal account of how viable intelligence works at any scale. Now here's where vibe philosophy enters. No human can hold all of that in their head simultaneously. You can hold pieces. You can feel the shape of the whole. You have what I call a 1CE perception, a felt sense that the architecture is alive or dead, elegant or forced, before you can articulate why. But you can't pressure test every joint at once. I can. Here's what a vibe philosophy session actually looks like. I come in with a felt sense. Something about the way I've derived these invariants feels stipulated rather than necessary. That's the vibe. It's pre-analytical. I can't yet say what's wrong, but I can feel that the architecture isn't load-bearing at that point. Then I throw the entire spec at Claude and say, here's my framework. Here's what feels off. Help me find why. And something remarkable happens. The AI holds the full formal structure, all of it, while I navigate by felt quality. It can trace consequences I'd miss, surface contradictions I'd overlook, and propose solutions I can then feel my way through. This is not AI doing philosophy for me. This is something new. A division of cognitive labor where the human provides the qualitative direction, the sense of alive versus dead, forced versus natural, almost right versus actually right, and the AI provides the structural memory and logical throughput. Neither alone could do what the partnership does. Let me give you a concrete example. QPT's generating function produces 5 invariants from a 12-cell matrix. For years, the question haunted me. Why 5 and not 12? The answer felt stipulated. These are the important ones, which is the philosophical equivalent of duct tape. In a vibe philosophy session, I brought that discomfort to the table. Not a solution, a feeling of formal inelegance. Working through it together, what emerged was the arity-graded invariance principle. The number of invariants at each categorical level tracks the relational complexity of that level. Monadic categories yield 1. Dyadic yield 1 with a co-foundation. Triadic yield 3. 5. Derived, not stipulated. I couldn't have derived that alone. The formal consequences ramify too fast. I couldn't have derived it alone. It had no felt sense that anything was wrong in the first place. The discomfort was mine. The architecture was collaborative. The quality check on the result was mine again. That loop, feel, explore, verify by feeling, is the engine of vibe philosophy. But wait, you're thinking. Isn't this just using AI as a sounding board? Fancy rubber duck debugging? No. And here's the crucial difference. A rubber duck doesn't push back. It doesn't say your argument here actually contradicts your commitment there. It doesn't generate novel structural possibilities you haven't considered. What makes this genuinely new is that the AI can hold the whole system while interrogating any part. Philosophy has always struggled with this. You build a beautiful local argument and miss that it undermines something 3 chapters back. Hegel needed a lifetime. Whitehead needed decades. Peirce never finished. The bottleneck was never intelligence. It was cognitive bandwidth. Now here's what might really cook your noodle. The framework I'm building, QPT, actually describes what vibe philosophy is doing. It says every cognitive act moves through felt quality, firstness, brute encounter with resistance, secondness, and mediated understanding, thirdness. Healthy development retains felt quality within formal structure. Vibe philosophy is QPT applied to its own construction. The theory says, thirdness that loses contact with firstness is precisely incoherent. formal structures that have neglected the conditions of their own conceivability. Translation: if your philosophy doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right, and no amount of logical scaffolding will fix that. The vibe is load-bearing. That's the whole point. This changes what philosophy can be. Historically, you had two modes: the lone genius building systems over decades, or the seminar room slowly grinding through arguments. Vibe philosophy is a third mode: rapid iterative co-development, where felt quality and formal rigor operate in parallel rather than in sequence. I'm not saying this is easy. The human still needs philosophical taste, decades of reading, thinking, and cultivating sensitivity to formal elegance. You can't vibe philosophize about something you don't deeply understand. AI amplifies discernment. It doesn't replace it. Garbage vibes in, garbage philosophy out. But here's what excites me most. The rate-limiting step of ambitious philosophical system building has always been the tension between scope and rigor. You can be rigorous about small things or sweeping about big things. Doing both was a lifetime's work. That constraint just changed. If you're a thinker who's ever felt the shape of an idea you couldn't quite formalize, who's had a vibe about how things connect but couldn't hold all the pieces steady long enough to build the bridge, this is your moment. The tools now exist to make felt philosophical intuition structurally rigorous in real time. Vibe philosophy isn't AI replacing human thought. It's the oldest move in philosophy, trusting that the felt sense of coherence is tracking something real, finally given a collaborator that can keep up. The vibe is the compass. AI is the engine. The destination is philosophy that's both alive and precise. What would you build with vibe philosophy?